Three more bodies were recovered from a Manhattan neighborhood following the crash of a giant construction crane that toppled over the weekend. The crane fell and crushed a residential building in Manhattan on Saturday, killing 7 construction workers and injuring more than 10 others.
In response to growing concerns over crane safety, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration recently released new crane and derrick safety standards. Some of the most important provisions in the new standards include operator certification, qualification requirements for hand signal personnel, qualifications of maintenance and repair employees, requirements for ground condition inspection, and requirements for crane inspection. You may find it amusing that your barber or bartender have to have a license, but a crane operator doesn't. That has changed. Crane operators will be given 4 years to obtain certification, and the certification costs will be incurred by their employer. The rules will affect more than 4.8 million employees of crane and construction companies nationwide. All of these workers will have to be made aware of the rule changes and will have to be trained to work in compliance to the new standards. The employer must provide training as follows. Overhead power lines. The employer must train each operator and crew member assigned to work with the equipment on all of the following. Procedures to be followed in the event of electrical contact with the power line. Include information regarding the danger of electrocution from the operator simultaneous in the ground, the importance of the operator's safety remaining inside the cab, except where there is an imminent danger of fire, explosion, or other emergency that necessitates leaving the cab. The safest means of evacuating from equipment that may be energized. The danger of the potentially energized zone around the equipment, step potential. The need for crew in the area to avoid approaching or touching the equipment or load. Safe clearance distance from power lines. Power lines are presumed to be energized unless the utility owner-operator confirms that the power line has been and continues to be de-energized and visibly grounded at the worksite. Power lines are presumed to be uninsulated unless the utility owner-operator or a registered engineer who is a qualified person with respect to electrical power transmission and distribution confirms that the line is insulated. The limitations of an insulating link device, proximity alarm, and range control device if to be followed to properly ground equipment and the limitations of grounding. In addition, employees working as dedicated spotters must be trained to enable them to effectively perform their task. The employer must ensure that prior to operating any equipment, the person is operating the equipment in a training period, or the operator is qualified and certified to operate the equipment. When an employee is not qualified or certified to operate equipment, the employer must provide each operator in training with sufficient training prior to operating the equipment to enable the operator in training to operate the equipment safely. The tasks performed by the operator in training must be within the operator training's ability and must be continuously monitored by a trainer. The trainer must meet 4 requirements. The operator's trainer must be an employer or agent of the operator in training's employer. The operator's trainer is certified or has passed the written portion of a certification test and is familiar with the proper use of the equipment's controls. The trainer will perform no other tasks that detract from the trainer's ability to monitor the operator in training. For equipment tower cranes, the operator's trainer and the operator in training must be in direct line of sight of each other, and they must communicate verbally or by hand signals. For tower cranes, the operator's trainer and the operator in training must be in direct communication with each other. The operator in training must not operate the equipment in any of the following circumstances, except where the operator's trainer determines that the operator in training's skills are sufficient for this high-skill work. If any part of the equipment, load line or load, including rigging and lifting accessories, if operated up to the working radius in the work zone, could of a power line that is up to 350 kilovolts or within 50 feet of a power line that is over 350 kilovolts. If the equipment is used to hoist personnel, in multiple equipped lifts, if the equipment is used over a shaft, cofferdam, or in a tank farm. The employer of the signal must ensure that each signal person meets the qualification requirements as determined by a third-party qualified evaluator or the employer's qualified evaluator as follows. Know and understand the type of signals used. If hand signals are used, the signal person must know and understand the standard method for hand signals. Be competent in the application of the type of signals used. Have a basic understanding of equipment operation and limitations, including crane dynamics involved in swinging and stopping loads and boom deflection from hoisting loads. Maintenance, inspection, and repair personnel are permitted to operate the equipment only where all of the following requirements are met. Operation is limited to functions necessary to perform maintenance, inspect the equipment, or verify its performance. The personnel either operate the equipment under the direct supervision of an operator who is qualified or certified, or are familiar with the operation, limitations, characteristics, and hazards associated with the type of equipment. Maintenance and repair personnel must meet the definition of a qualified person with respect to the equipment and maintenance repair tasks performed. Ground conditions mean the ability of the ground to support the equipment, including slope, compaction, and firmness. The equipment must not be assembled or used unless ground conditions are firm and to a sufficient extent so that, in conjunction with the use of supporting materials, the equipment manufacturer's specifications for adequate support and degree of level of the equipment are met. The requirement for the ground to be drained does not apply to marshes and wetlands. Inform the user of the equipment and the operator of the location of hazards beneath the equipment setup area, such as voids, tanks, and utilities if those hazards are identified in documents that are in the possession of the controlling entity. Equipment that has modifications, additions, or repairs which affect the safe operation of the equipment or capacity must be inspected by a qualified person after such modifications, addition, or repair have been completed and prior to initial use. Modifications or additions which affect the capacity or safe operation of the equipment are prohibited by the manufacturer after review of the technical safety merits of the proposed modification addition, rejects the proposal and the reasons for the rejection in a written response. If the manufacturer rejects the proposal but does not explain the reasons for the rejection in writing, the employer may treat this as a manufacturer refusal to review the request. If the manufacturer gives the modification addition in writing, the load charts, procedures, and instruction manuals and instruction plates, tags, decals are modified as necessary to accord with the modification addition. Upon completion of assembly, the equipment must be inspected by a qualified person to assure that it is configured in accordance with the manufacturer equipment criteria. Equipment must not be used until an inspection demonstrates that the equipment is configured in accordance with the applicable criteria. A competent person must begin a visual inspection to each shift that will be used, completed before or during that shift. The inspection must consist of observation for apparent deficiencies. At a minimum, the inspection must include all of the following. This list also applies to monthly inspections. Control mechanisms for maladjustments interfering with proper operation. Control and drive mechanisms for apparent excessive wear of components and contamination by lubricants, water, or other foreign matter. Air, hydraulic, and other pressurized lines for deterioration or leakage, particularly those which in normal operation. Hydraulic system for proper fluid level. Hooks and latches for deformation, cracks, wear, or damage such as from chemicals or heat. Wire rope riving for compliance with the manufacturer's specifications. Wire rope must be visually inspected by a competent person prior to each shift the equipment is used, which must be completed before or during that shift. The inspection must consist of observation of wire ropes, running and standing, that are likely to be in use during the shift for apparent deficiencies. Untwisting of wire rope or booming down is not required as part of this inspection. Apparent deficiencies. Significant distortion of the wire rope structure, such as kinking, crushing, unstranding, bird caging, signs of core failure or core protrusion between the outer strands, significant corrosion, electric arc damage from a source other than power lines or heat damage, improperly applied end connections, significantly corroded, bent, or worn end connections, such as from severe service. Visible broken wires as follows. In running wire ropes, 6 randomly distributed broken wires in one rope lay, or 3 wires in a strand in one rope lay, where a rope lay is the length along the rope in which one strand makes a complete revolution around the rope. In rotation-resistant ropes, 2 randomly distributed broken wires in 6 rope diameters, or 4 randomly distributed broken wires in 30 rope diameters. In pendants or standing wire ropes, more than 2 broken wires in one rope lay located in rope beyond end connections, and or more than 1 broken wire in a rope lay located at an end connection. A diameter reduction of 5% from nominal diameter. In rotation-resistant wire rope, core protrusion or other distortion indicating core failure. Prior electrical contact with a power line. A broken strand. Critical review items. Rotation resistance wire rope in use. Wire rope being used for boom hoists and luffing hoists, particularly at reverse bends. Wire rope at flange points, crossover points, and repetitive pickup points on drums. Wire rope at or near terminal end. Wire ropes in contact with saddles, equalizer sheaves, or other sheaves where rope travel is limited. Removal from service. If a deficiency in Category 1 is identified, an immediate determination must be made by a competent person as to whether the deficiency constitutes a safety hazard. If the deficiency is determined to constitute a safety hazard, operations involving the wire rope in question must be prohibited until the wire rope is replaced or can be localized. Joining lengths of wire rope by splicing is prohibited. If a deficiency in Category 2 is identified, operations involving use of the wire rope in question must be prohibited until the employer complies with the wire rope manufacturer's established criterion for removal from service or a different criterion that the wire rope manufacturer has approved for wire rope. The wire rope is replaced. The deficiency is localized. The problem is corrected by severing the wire rope in two. The undamaged portion may continue to be used. If a deficiency in Category 3 is identified, operations involving use of the wire rope must be prohibited until the wire rope is replaced. If the deficiency, other than line contact, is localized, the problem is corrected by severing the wire in two. The damaged portion may continue to be used. Where a wire rope is required to be removed from service, the equipment as a whole or the hoist with that wire rope must be tagged out until the wire rope is repaired or replaced. Electrical apparatus for malfunctioning, signs of apparent excessive deterioration, dirt, or moisture accumulation. Tires when in use for proper inflation and condition. Ground conditions around for proper, including ground settling under and around outriggers, stabilizers, and supporting foundation groundwater accumulation or similar conditions. The equipment for level position with the tolerances specified by equipment manufacturer's recommendation, both for each shift and after each move setup. Operator can windows for significant cracks, breaks, or other deficiencies that would hamper the operator's rails, rail stops, rail clamps, and supporting surfaces when the equipment has rail traveling. This does not apply when the railroad tracks are part of the general railroad system of transportation. At least every 12 months, the equipment must be inspected by a qualified person. Disassembly is required as necessary to complete the inspection. In addition to the items to be inspected in the shift inspection, the equipment must be inspected for all the following: equipment structure, including the boom, and, if equipped, the jib. Structural members, deformed, cracked, or significantly corroded. Bolts, rivets, or fasteners, failed, significantly corroded. Welds for cracks. Sheaves and drums for significant, such as bearings, gears, rollers, and devices for distortion, cracks, or significant wear. Brake and clutch system parts, pawls, and ratchets for excessive wear. Safety devices and operational aids for proper operation, including significant inaccuracies. Gas, diesel, electric, or other power plants for safety-related items, seeking exhaust and emergency shutdown feature, and conditions and proper operation. Chains and chain of sprockets for excessive wear of sprocket and excessive chain stretch. Travel steering, brakes, and locking devices for proper operation. Tires for damage or excessive wear. Hydraulic, pneumatic, and other pressurized hoses, fittings, and tubing as follows. Flexible of its junction with the fittings for indications of leaks. Threaded or clamped joints for leaks. Outer covering of the hose for blistering, abnormal deformation, or other signs of failure, impending failure. Outer surface of a hose, rigid tube, or fitting for indications of excessive abrasion or scrubbing. Hydraulic and pneumatic pumps as follows. Performance indicators, unusual noises or vibration, low operating speed, excessive heating of the fluid, low pressure. Loose bolts or fasteners. Shaft seals and joints between pump section for leaks. Hydraulic and pneumatic valves follows. Spools, sticking, proper return to neutral, and leaks. Leaks. Valve housing cracks. Relief valves, failure to reach correct pressure. There is a manufacturer procedure for checking pressure, it must be followed. Hydraulic and pneumatic cylinders as drifting caused by leaking across the piston. Rod seals and the joints for leaks. Cylinder rods for scores, nicks, or dents. Case, barrel for significant dents. Rod eyes and connecting joints loose or deformed. Outrigger or stabilizer pads, floats for excessive wear or cracks. Slider pads for excessive wear or cracks. Electrical components and wiring for cracked or split insulation and loose or corroded terminals. Warning labels and decals originally supplied with the equipment by the manufacturer or otherwise required standard or unreadable. Originally equipped operator seat or equivalent missing. Operator seat unserviceable. Originally equipped step, ladders, handrails, guards missing. Steps, ladders, handrails, guards in unusable, unsafe condition. This inspection must include functional testing to determine that the equipment as configured the inspection is functioning properly. If any deficiency is identified, an immediate determination must be made by the qualified person as to where the deficiency constitutes a safety hazard or, though not yet a safety hazard, needs to be monitored in the monthly inspections. If the qualified person determines that a deficiency is a safety hazard, the equipment must be taken out of service until it has been corrected, except when temporary alternative measures are implemented as authorized. If the qualified person determines that, though not presently a safety hazard, the deficiency needs to be monitored, the employer must ensure that the deficiency is checked in the monthly inspection. The following information must be documented, maintained, and retained by the employer that conducts the inspection. 3 months for the monthly inspection and 2 months for the annual inspection. Checked and the results of the inspection, the name and signature of the person who conducted the inspection, and date. The severity of use conditions is such that there is a reasonable probability of damage or excessive wear, such as loading that may have exceeded rated capacity, shock loading that may have exceeded rated capacity, prolonged exposure to a corrosive atmosphere. The employer must using the equipment, and a qualified person must inspect the equipment for structural damage to determine if it can continue to be used safely. In light of the use conditions, determine whether any items, conditions in the annual inspection need to be inspected. If so, the qualified person will inspect the items' conditions. If a deficiency is identified, an immediate determination must be made by the qualified person as to whether the deficiency constitutes a safety hazard or, though not yet a safety hazard, needs to be monitored in the monthly inspections. If the qualified person determines that a deficiency is a safety hazard, the equipment must be taken out of service until it has been corrected, except when temporary alternative measures are implemented as authorized. Equipment that has been idle for 3 months or more must be inspected by a qualified person in accordance with the requirements for a monthly inspection. Any part of a manufacturer's procedures regarding inspections that relate to safe operation, such as to a safety device or operational aid, critical part of a control system, power plant, system, load-sustaining structural components, load hook, or in-use operating mechanism that is more expensive or has a more frequent inspection than the requirements contained in the shift, monthly or annual inspection must be followed. All documentation of the shift annual inspections must be available during the applicable doc retention period to all persons who conduct the inspections. Again, the new rules are significant and go far to help prevent crane accidents. There's a lot to know, so please take the time to carefully read and understand the standard. If you're unsure of any of the requirements or just have questions, check with your supervisor or another subject matter expert on crane safety. We encourage you to be diligent. Learn as much as you can about crane safety and the new regulations as you can, and never take shortcuts while working with cranes. The risk is just too great. Thank you.